I guess I started getting into filmmaking when I was probably about 12 years old. Like the first film I saw that really made me want to be a filmmaker, funny enough, was John Carpenter's The Thing. That was when I was 12, so probably shouldn't have watched it then. But I just remember I was with my uncle in Scotland, and it's just the way I felt, the way the things looked on screen, the creature, it just really got me into that. I was suddenly thinking, like, how can I tell stories like this? And that was what really got me wanting to make movies. So John Carpenter's definitely a huge influence. I've got to say, the first Star Wars film, A New Hope, like I used to watch that on repeat. I just loved that original trilogy, and it just made me always want to tell stories.
So you really love cinema and film, especially short films, as we were talking about before the interview. So what is it about short films that particularly appeal to you as a storyteller?
I think there's something like, you have to be concise with a short film. You know, you can see some shorts that are pushing 25, 30 minutes, and sometimes that runtime doesn't feel justified. I just feel there's something amazing about telling a story in 15 minutes that can leave an impact. Over a feature, that impact can sort of hit maybe at the start and then just steadily decrease as the film goes on. Well, a short, there's no time for that. You're in and then you're out as quickly as possible.
Right, so let's get on to Pearls then.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of themes in this story, but first off, what inspired you to want to tell this story, and why tell it as a horror, given that there's so many issues around that are quite relatable to some people?
Well, funnily enough, like the idea first came from my dad and my brother were in Scotland on a walk. My brother ate this oyster that the term he used was thick and foamy, and I was like, what does that even mean? What it turned out is that he ate a fertile oyster, and the foam was oyster eggs. I was like, that is disgusting. So I had an idea of like, okay, someone getting impregnated by an oyster effectively. And then as I was doing research into oysters, you know, they're commonly known as like an aphrodisiac, I started noticing how my social media like platform was getting attacked with like, you have low testosterone adverts, you are losing your hair adverts, you have erectile dysfunction adverts. For me, I just thought it was interesting how, like, a lot of people, instead of like talking about their issues with a doctor, with a partner, they'd rather take this magical mystery drug or pill that they think will change their life. But actually, you've got no idea what that stuff is. And if anything, it doesn't help you. A lot of the time, you hear more horror stories about these supplements. So that's kind of where the idea came from. The reason I told it as a horror was, I guess, because I wanted to make a body horror. I wanted to have some gross transformations. But I feel also body horror as a genre lets you focus on these kind of issues more than maybe a straight drama would. You know, a drama, obviously you can tell the same story. In fact, I'd say a lot of Pearls is kind of a drama. But I feel like you're missing that viscerality that can come from what a body horror can bring. And I feel like that can leave more of an impact than just a straight drama about the subject.
So it's interesting that you pick on infertility as a topic. It's something that's very real for a lot of people. In your research, do you think maybe that there is still a stigma around dealing with such a very, very personal issue that actually, if you talk openly about it, you can fix the problem quite easily?
100%. I mean, I think anything sort of like deficient sexually can bring this up. You know, it's the same for women. It's the same for things like miscarriages. These are things that people don't want to talk about. I think the reason that these sort of like snake oil salesmen like manage to succeed so much is because there is this hush-hush attitude about it. And really for the character in the film, because when I wrote it, it wasn't just infertility. It was maybe he doesn't want a kid. Maybe he's not ready. It could be, I kind of wanted to leave it slightly open there. But in terms of the infertility aspect, 100%, it's something that people don't want to talk about. And I think what they do is they play into this sort of toxic masculinity factor where you're not a real man if you can't conceive. You're not a real man if you can't perform in the bedroom. And that's kind of why I wanted to tell the story this way. You know, I feel it's sort of about how not just men, but women, everyone is targeted by these people and the disasters and the damage that can be done because of it.
So in your film then, do you sort of touch on some of those themes in telling this body horror story as well? Do you kind of sort of not raise the issue, but certainly just sort of put it out there and so that it's a bit relatable?
Well, I think, you know, you watch the characters' decisions, and what I'm hoping is that people will see a bit of themselves internally. Maybe there's something that it doesn't have to just be infertility. Maybe they're not happy in their relationship and they're not willing to talk about it. And the whole point of this film is he is the one who drives these decisions. He eats the oysters. He doesn't talk to his wife. And instead of thinking, and instead of it having a positive outcome, it destroys everything for them.
Okay, and in watching the film later on, can we expect some Carpenter-esque cinematography and approaches? Yeah,
100%. You know, I love that 80s style of filmmaking. I love things on dollies. I love static shots. I love like big wides. But it's not just Carpenter. David Cronenberg, he's another huge influence, and I wanted to have that kind of sort of stylistic visual style for the film.
Okay, so as we said earlier, it's going to be screened later on here at HollyShorts. How big a deal is it for you as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, to have your film featured at a prestigious event like this?
It's honestly such an incredible feeling. Like, I think every filmmaker wants to experience moments like this. Every filmmaker wants to see their work against other people's, and to get accepted to a festival like HollyShorts, Oscar qualifying, BAFTA qualifying, it means so much. It's validation in some ways, but also it's such a great experience to actually see all these other people's amazing work as well, and the fact that you fit in amongst those people is a hell of a compliment.